Hello, my name is Alexis Schmidt, and today I'm going to be going through Chapter 7, at least a little portion of it, on group and team dynamics. So let's begin with the PowerPoint. All right. So God created us to be in relationship with other people, and that is seen all throughout history, starting with Adam and Eve and going all the way up to and relating to our topic today being exercise and sport psychology. All right, so here are a couple definitions that we must first begin with. So a group is two or more people who interact with and exert mutual influence on each other. And then a team is any group of people who must interact with each other to accomplish shared objectives. So they're pretty similar words. However, the definitions are different, and so it's very important to pay attention to those differences. All right, so these are a couple different theories of group development. The first one that we're going to be starting off with is the linear perspective. And the linear perspective is the assumption that groups move progressively through different stages. So when critical issues arise in each stage, after the situation is successfully dealt with, the group then moves on. So in a pretty linear movement, and that's obviously where they probably got their name from. The cyclical, in quotes, life cycle perspective is a model that assumes that groups develop in a manner similar to the life cycle of individuals. And they give the example of how individuals experience birth, growth, and death. And so if we relate this to teams, there's the birth of a team, and that is where they're just beginning to meet each other, and then they get to grow together, and there are going to be times where they will fail or not complete exactly what they're wanting to, and it is just a perspective that looks not in a straight line, but as a cycle. And then the last one that the textbook discusses is the pendular perspective. And that model emphasizes the shifts that occur in interpersonal relationships during the growth and development of groups. This model includes the demands of the environment as well, instead of a simple progressive through group stages, and that's the big difference between the pendular and the linear. So the pendular takes the environment as well, instead of just moving on after each situation is dealt with. So as we start, we are going to look at how to understand group structures, and we're going to look at roles. So I thought that we could start by looking up what the definition of a role was. So a role consists of the set of behaviors required or expected of the person occupying a certain position in a group. So these are just a couple different types of roles, and I'll just be talking about their definitions. So formal roles are dictated by the nature and structure of the organization. For example, that can be a coach, athletic director, exercise leader, and there are also multiple other that are discussed in the textbook. The next role is an informal role. And so those evolve from interactions among group members, for example, comedian, spark plug, cancer. And I actually developed some questions towards the end of the book that talk about those. So let's just go in depth a little about what those are. So I don't know if you've ever been a part of a sports group, but there are those people that are just naturally funny and entertaining. And there are people such as a spark plug that unites others and inspires them towards a common goal. There's the Cancer, and they express negative emotions that spread destructively throughout the team. A distractor, and the distractor diverts the attention of other teammates and decreases their focus. There's an enforcer, and that's an athlete who is physically intimidating or willingly belligerent and who is counted on to retaliate when rough tactics are used by the opposing team. The mentor is an athlete who acts as a trusted counselor or teacher for another athlete on the team. An informal leader, and this one is the verbal informal leader, is an athlete who leads the team both on and off the court through verbal commands. There's the team player, and that's an athlete who gives exceptional effort and is willing to sacrifice his or her own interests for the good of the team. The star player, who is an individual who is distinguished or celebrated because of his or her personality, performance, or sportsmanship. The informal leader, who's nonverbal, and so that's an athlete who leads the team by example, hard work, and dedication. The malingerer is an athlete who prolongs psychological or physical symptoms of injury for some type of external gain. And the social convener, that's an athlete who is involved in the planning and organization of social gathering for a team to increase group harmony and integration. Sorry, you'll have to excuse me, I'm working through a cough. And those are all examples from William White's classic 1943 book on social structure of street gangs. But we can see those through all of the sports teams. And so I don't know if you've ever been on a team, but I've definitely experienced people who are the comedians and like to make everyone laugh, but those people who are also entertainers. I'm sorry, my dogs are in the room, as you can see, and they don't like when I talk to other people. I'm sorry, I'm just getting a drink of water. All right, next we'll talk about role clarity. Role clarity is making sure a person understands their role. And then role acceptance is when the player accepts the role. So there could be players that understand the role that they need to have, but they just won't accept the role. And then there's role conflict. And that exists when the role occupant doesn't have sufficient ability, motivation, time, or understanding to achieve the goal despite the presence of consensus on a desired goal or outcome. Most common is when a person is wearing too many hats, quote unquote. So next we are going to talk about norms. A norm is defined as a level of performance, pattern behavior, or belief. They can either be formally established or informally developed by the group. The norm of productivity is the standard for effort and performance accepted by the team. When standards are set, it becomes the new norm for other people. And then there are the positive norms. So as those norms are set, it is important to have positive norms enforced. And those are ways to set those up. You'll have to excuse me. My sickness makes it hard for me to speak. So the positive norms can be set up by a coach, and they can enlist leaders to set those examples. And so sometimes there are negative norms that are established, and those are what the coach would like to get away from. And so there can be modification of team norms. So if modifications must be made, choosing people that have influence are a great way to start because they can start to set new trends. And also, the nature of communication is very important when talking about changing a behavior, because if you're being very negative yourself, it's going to be very hard to establish change. And it's very important so that the message can get across well. Next, we'll be talking about creating an effective team climate. So these are some examples on there. I'll just zoom out a little bit and then zoom back in. So to create an effective team climate, here are some ways that you can do that. The social support is an exchange of resources between at least two individuals perceived by the provider or the recipient to be intended to enhance the well-being of the recipient. And I'm just going to list the 7 ways to build an effective team climate through social support. The first being listening support, and that is the perception that someone else is listening without giving advice or being judgmental. Emotional support is the perception that another person is providing comfort and caring and is indicating that he is on the support recipient's side. Emotional challenge support, and that is the perception that another person is challenging the support recipient to evaluate her attitudes, values, and feelings. Guidelines for enhancing emotional challenge include encouraging emotional challenging verbal exchanges between players during practice and competitions. And challenge team members to do their best through individual and team meetings, focusing on achieving team and individual goals. The fourth one is reality confirmation support. And that is the perception that another person who is similar to the support recipient, who sees things the same way, is helping confirm the support recipient's perspective. I'm so sorry, I'm taking a little sip of water. My bad. This video is not going well for me, but I hope you are learning from it. Number 5, task appreciation support. That is the perception that another person is acknowledging the support recipient's efforts and expressing appreciation for the work that person does. Task challenge support. The perception that another is challenging the support recipient's way of thinking about a task or activity in order to stretch, motivate, and lead the support recipient to greater creativity, excitement, and involvement. And then lastly is personal assistance support. And that is the perception that another is providing services or help, such as running an errand or driving the support recipient somewhere. So now that we're done talking about social support, let's move on to proximity. So people are actually more likely to bond when they are near each other. And some ways to establish proximity within a team is to have some retreats that they go on, or team bonding activities, because it's true that as we are closer with other people, we're more likely to bond with them and get to know who they are as a person. Excuse my dog. Say hi, Bella. Okay. So distinctiveness. That's when a group feels distinct. Its feelings of unity and oneness increase. And so it's completely true that God made us as individual human beings. So he made us to be different from other people. And when we don't feel like everyone else, we will actually be better for it. Another thing is fairness. When a coach treats an athlete fair, then that will influence their level of commitment, motivation, and satisfaction as being part of the team. Similarity. Similarity among team members in commitments, attitudes, aspiration, and goals is important to developing a team climate. Task interdependence. All group members benefit or suffer from the group's performance. And so that is the quote talking about how us being a part of a team, we're either going to win together or we're going to lose together, but we're still going to be in this together. And so you're depending upon each other, not just depending upon yourself. And then assessment of team climate. And so that's measuring athletes' feelings about being on the team and their perceptions of the coach's behavior and attitudes. And so there is this little questionnaire, and I can turn to this page in the book and show you that really quickly. And this is the questionnaire that a team member can take, and just so that they can see how they're doing and answer these 5 questions, and the coach can see it and see how the player's attitudes toward the coach is. And these are the questions and answers towards the quiz. Yay! I'll just turn this so you guys can see it. So, I wish I could do this some better way. But a blank is a group of people who must interact with each other to accomplish shared objectives. And that is indeed a team. You can list the 3 theories of group development, which are in the textbook, and that are the linear perspective cyclical theory and the pendular theory. And then the textbook definition of a role consists of the set of behaviors required or expected of the person occupying a certain position in a group. I'm just asking you in question number 4 to provide 2 textbook examples of formal roles. And I list all the possible answers, which are athletic director, coach, exercise leader, and team captain. Those are what the book mentioned. And then the same for number 5. I just want you to provide 2 textbook examples of informal roles given by William White. And those are the comedian, spark plug, cancer distractor, enforcer, mentor, informal leader, the nonverbal, informal leader, verbal, team player, start player, mailinger, and social convener. All right. Provide 2 of the 7 examples from building an effective team climate through social support. And I won't go through all of those because we already talked about them earlier. All right. True or false? People are more likely to bond when they are near each other. True. And if you remember from when we were talking about earlier, we got that from the section on task interdependence. Oh, just kidding. We got that from proximity. My bad. And then what is the famous saying many coaches say? A team that wins together and blanks together, which is loses. And reverting back to question 9, what is that statement an example of? Task interdependence, which is where I got ahead of myself the last time. So that's not all of the textbook. I was a part of a team, and my teammate is going to finish out the textbook. I do apologize for my cough. I have been straining myself with speaking, so that's why I have this cough. But basically this chapter talks about how being a part of a team is so important and different ways to modify the behaviors so that there can be a healthy team atmosphere. And that's why we talked about the norms, because there are going to be norms as a part of a team. And the norms, an example of that is when you start off in an exercise program and you only exercise for 30 minutes, well, when you keep on doing that, the new people coming here are going to see that you exercise for 30 minutes. So then that is going to be the norm to exercise for 30 minutes. And so norms are just very important. Every team establishes that, and making sure that teams do it in a positive way is great. And so I hope you can take what you learned in this chapter and apply it to your team. All right, thanks.